you to our live talk on Don't Believe Everything You Think. My name is Inken Schubert. I'm an account manager at INSITE Interventions. As you might know, INSITE Interventions is a provider of various services in the field of corporate health. And you might know us because your employer has booked one of our ERP services, Talingo ERP or Mein ERP or short-term therapy. And I'm going to be the host of this event today. And as you can see, I'm not alone. I've brought a colleague, Tamara Müller. She will take care of your questions today. And I'll just hand over to you, Tamara. You can introduce yourself and, explain how it works with the chat.
Thank you, Inken. Hello from my side too. My name is Tamara Müller and I also work as an account manager at INSITE. And today I will be in charge of the Q&A box. Maybe you can try out if it works or if you already found the box. You have the opportunity to get in touch with us via the Q&A box and ask your questions. Only the three of us will see your questions. Due to the limited time, it will not be possible to include all questions in today's live talk. So for specific or individual questions, you can contact INSITE for an individual consultation afterwards. And yes, now I hand over to you, Dorothea.
Thank you very much. And also from my side, a very warm welcome to all of you joining us this afternoon. My name is Dorothea Kenny. I'm a health manager and mental health coach, and I've been working in corporate health management for the last 13 years, supporting employees and supporting managers to retain or regain their health balance in challenging times that we're living in. And I'm really happy to be here today to be talking about a very, very important topic. Because today we're going to find out and take a glance at which role our thinking and our thoughts play when it comes to our stress experience and our stress level. Thank you to have me on board today.
Thank you that you are here with us today and share your expertise with us, Dorothea. When I prepared this live talk, I came across the following quote. This says, the greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. This is a quote from William James, who was a professor of psychology and philosophy at Harvard University. And I think this really is exactly what we are, what I want to know. What can we do in order to force or to
refocus, let's call it.
Yeah, to refocus. Sorry, yeah.
No worries. It sounds better than to force myself, because that's what we want to get out of forcing yourself to do things. So we want to learn to do it a different way, which is more helpful.
So yeah, I just want to talk with you about how thoughts influence our stress feeling and what we can do, how we can deal with stress, and what we can do about thinking ourselves into stress. This is what this live talk is going to be about. And you told me before, Dorothea, you'd like to start with a short story.
Yeah, it's a story time. I don't know when the last time was that you were being read a story to. Takes a couple of minutes, but it's quite a good story, I think, to demonstrate the relevance or the importance of our thinking on a stress experience. Okay, so make yourselves comfortable, and I'm going to read to you the story, Why Humans Have More Stress Than Rabbits. Imagine it's a beautiful spring morning. The sun is shining and the meadows are showing off the glorious colors, fresh green grass and colorful spring flowers in between. A rabbit is sitting in the middle of the meadow, happily chewing away at the delicious grass. In the distance, a man with a dog beside him appears into sight. As soon as the dog spots the rabbit, he immediately sets off to hunt him. The rabbit is instantly on high alert. Its stress system is activated in a flash. The rabbit's ears go up, all senses are focused on the imminent danger, the heart rate goes up, all muscles tense up, ready for a life-saving escape. The rabbit instinctively sprints off to safety. After a few minutes of chasing, the dog gives up and returns to its master. What does the rabbit do after a brief moment? Continues to graze, as if nothing had happened. Now imagine the rabbit was a human being. What would he do then? Mostly, he would think if he was a human. I imagine it to be something like this. Oh boy, that was close. You have to put your dog on a leash when you go for a walk. It's unbelievable how inconsiderate people are. At one point, the dog almost got me. He was so close. I could already see his huge teeth. That was such a scary sight. I wonder if he'll come back. I wonder if they walk here regularly. I shouldn't graze here anymore. It's far too dangerous. Hold on a minute. My colleague John has grazed here last week. Why didn't he warn me? Was he deliberately trying to put me in danger? I've always had the feeling that John doesn't like me. Oh gosh, wasn't my wife about to come here with children? I really must warn my family. I was pretty fit today, but what if I didn't sleep so well the night before? I can't bear to imagine what would happen if the dog got hold of me. Do dogs actually play with their victims like cats do with mice? Oh my God, I can't even think about it. This is driving me crazy. Why was I born as a rabbit and not as a dog? Life is so unfair.
Thank you, Dorothea. This is quite interesting and shows how thoughts can act as a stress turbo almost.
So they can escalate.
Escalate. Yes.
Yeah.
If thoughts play such a decisive role in whether we feel stressed or not, what does modern stress research actually say about this, about the influence of thoughts on stress?
Yeah. Now let's take a look first of all at the stress response. So the poor little rabbit was running for his life, so his life was in danger. The stress response kicked in. Humans work the same way. Whenever we feel threatened by something, the stress response happens automatically. We can't stop that, and it's not a bad thing. In fact, the stress response has a protective function. It's good because it boosts our system that we're able to deal with a dangerous situation at hand. So the stress response itself is not bad. It's a good thing. It's there to help us, to support us, to protect us. Nowadays, our lives are not so much in danger, luckily, but we have other areas in our life that are in danger. And in order to better grasp that, let's take a look at some basic psychological needs. We all have a need for belonging. We have a need for recognition. We have a need for security. And those are the things that are being threatened today by situations around us. So whenever I'm in a situation where I feel that something that is dear to me, my self-worth, my family, my goals, my interests, if anything that's dear to me is under threat by something that's happening around me, that's when the stress response is kicked off. Now, and to answer your question, Inken, what's the role of our thinking? From modern stress research, we know that the stress experience is highly subjective. Stress is the result of my personal assessment. And in order to demonstrate this, let's take a look at a little example. How does this assessment work? And first of all, it's important to understand this assessment happens, the initial assessment happens on an unconscious level, so it's based on experience, and the assessment takes place in a part of your brain that is ultra fast. By the time it takes me to say the word assessment, this assessment has long happened. It's so quick. Now, let's take a closer look at an example that maybe a lot of people can identify with. You can imagine it's a usual day in the office and you've got lots and lots of stuff to do as per usual. Your boss calls you into his office, right? He says, Inken, listen, there's this new project. I know you haven't done it before, and I know it's not a lot of time, but I think you're able to do it. it needs to be done by next week, and it's highly important for the team. I'm really counting you to get this done. So that's the situation. Now,
Okay.
is this a stressful situation? Maybe
Sure.
it is, maybe it isn't. It depends on your assessment, Inken. So how does this assessment work? And I brought two little cards with me to demonstrate this. The first line of assessment is, this situation that's happening here, there's my boss giving me unexpectedly an additional task. Is that relevant to me? And that means, does it threaten something that I hold dear? If, Inken, you decided that this week I'm going to leave the office on time because I've done so much overtime. Now this new project comes in, that's going to be relevant to you, right? Because it's putting your goal to leave the office on time in danger. So yeah, first assessment, it's relevant. So it has the potential to kick off the stress response. Now a second evaluation comes into place. Am I able to deal with this? Do I have the resources? Do I have the time? Do I have the experience? Do I have the support to be able to get this important new project done within a week? If you come to the conclusion, yeah, boy, annoying, but yes, I think I can do it, then your stress response is not gonna be as strong. But if your assessment is, oh my goodness, I have no idea how on earth I'm gonna cope with this, your stress level is gonna go right up. So our assessment of a situation plays a very important role. And this is where what we want to talk about today, that the first assessment happens at the blink of an eye. We can't avoid that, but we can learn to reassess. That's what we want to talk about today. Reassessing a situation that puts me under pressure in order to be able to deal with it better.
So what we do is really we think ourselves into stress. It's because of how we evaluate situations and what we think about them. That's interesting.
And this first assessment, as I said, that usually happens on so fast and on an unconscious level. But going back to the rabbit, we can then think ourselves even deeper into the stressful situation. So let's stick with that example. You've got this new project going on. Now, either you go, okay, right, oh boy, this is annoying, but let's sit down and figure out, maybe you can put another project on hold, maybe you can get someone else involved, let's get going, sleeves up, let's get going. Versus you go to your colleague and you start doing a little bitchy bitch. Oh, guess what? He did it again. And he knows I'm up to my nose with work. And now he's giving me this as a project. It's so unfair. Why does he always come to me? I think he's got something against me. And when you start dwelling on this path of negative thinking, the only thing you're achieving is your stress is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what's important to understand, the power our thinking, our thoughts have over a stress experience. And whereas the initial reaction I can't stop from happening, we can learn to reassess, and we can learn to know when to put the brake on our negative thinking when it becomes so problematic that we increase our stress unnecessarily through having a lot of stress aggravating thoughts.
But as these thoughts come up automatically and very rapidly, as you said, I'd like to come to this later, because I think it's very interesting to find, or very important to find ways to identify these thoughts I have unconsciously. But first, I have something else I want to ask, and this is, it's not only about thoughts, but it's also the body, isn't it? The body and the emotions. Because in your example, I felt my body react, thinking myself into the situation, and emotions coming up. So it's not just the brain; it's also the soul, I'd say, and the body.
Yeah, Inken, interesting enough, you're not even in that situation. Just thinking about it caused a reaction with you. Now, if the audience is interested in doing a little experiment, we can try this out right here. Do a little experiment to experience firsthand that, like you pointed out, it's not just in my head, but what I think, the thoughts I have in my head affect my emotions and they affect my physical reaction. So there's a direct link between my thoughts, my emotions and my physical reaction. So little experiment. I don't know where you're sitting. If you're somewhere on your own, then feel free to close your eyes. I'd like to take you on a little imagination journey, and we're going to have 2 stopovers on a little journey. So if you're feel comfortable, then close your eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, and I'm going to ask you to think back to an unpleasant, stressful experience in the last while. Maybe you had an argument with your spouse. Maybe you made a silly mistake in the office. So think back to this unpleasant situation. And as you think back to it, observe really closely what is happening in your body. Is your body reacting? And if so, how is it reacting? What emotions are coming up as you're thinking about this unpleasant experience? I'll just spend another couple of seconds on this. What does it feel like? What effect is the memory of this unpleasant situation kicking off? Okay, and then I'd like you to stop thinking about the unpleasant situation and remember a nice experience. Think back to something lovely that happened. Maybe you had a beautiful dinner with your spouse or your friends. You got a nice compliment by somebody. Think back to something positive. And again, observe closely. What feelings are coming up? How's your body reacting? What does it feel like thinking back to this pleasant experience? And I'll give you another second to dwell on this lovely experience. And now I'm going to ask you to come back on 3, 2, 1, back to here now.
Wow.
If you want, please write in the Q&A box what it felt like. Inken, maybe you'd like to share with us. What was it like for you, going back in your memory?
In this unpleasant situation, I immediately got heart palpitations and like a lump in my stomach, and feeling of fear and helplessness. So it was really immediately. And with a pleasant memory, I immediately started smiling, and really this smiling, this was great. Yeah. And felt relaxed.
Felt relaxed. This is so important to bear in mind. What we think, the thoughts we dwell on, and we're going to talk about this later on. Thoughts pop up all the time. We can't stop thoughts from popping up, but we can decide which thoughts we want to dwell on. And our thinking has a direct and immediate effect on how we feel and how our body's going to react. This is so important to bear in mind, because that can be for some people, can be a key turning point when it comes to better dealing with stress, when we understand the dynamics behind this.
But can I just choose what I think about the situation? If there's a situation which is going to be difficult, I don't know, conflict with my spouse, for example, and this is usually this is a very difficult situation and stressful situation, unpleasant situation, and can I just decide to think, well, this is going to be a nice talk about our future?
Good question, Inken. Very good question. This is a really good point, and thank you for asking me that, because I want to make one thing clear. It's not about painting our world pink. It's not about just putting on pink glasses and saying, "Oh, this is not stressful. This is delightful." It's not about that. It's about changing perspective. Let me demonstrate it to you like this. I'm sure that most of you have been to a theater, right? Let's pretend this is a theater stage, okay? Now, and as we know, in a theater, it's all dark in the beginning. And then eventually, spotlight, there's a little torch, and eventually the spotlight will go on. So I'm able to see what is on that stage, but only where it's illuminated, right? So on the stage, there can be many, many things, right? And if my spotlight is only directed on the negative thing, I can't see what's also there, right? If I change perspective, if I decide to move my attention to the other side of the stage, only then can I see what's also there. So coming back to your example, I can't just say, oh, it's going to be a lovely talk. No, it's not about just trying to convince yourself that it's going to be a lovely talk, but it's about having a different perspective and not focusing on this thought of, oh boy, it's always terrible. Oh, this is always terrible when I have this argument with my husband. If you go in with that thought, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It is going to be terrible again because you're telling yourself it's going to be terrible. So it's about taking on a different perspective and looking at it from another angle. How else could I think about the situation, right? For example, okay, this is challenging. I'm aware this is challenging and it's causing me pressure, but I want to be open to really listening to what he has to say instead of barging in and, bringing in my arguments. I want to decide to hold back and really listen to what he has to say. So you're going in with a more open mindset instead of this thought, oh, this is probably going to be terrible again, like it was the last 10 times. It's about changing your perspective, about moving your focus onto other aspects. And every situation has two sides. And when we talk about stress aggravating thought, one frequent stress aggravating thought is that we focus, and that is very, very typical for people under a lot of pressure. We focus one-sidedly on this one area on our stage where we feel threatened, where we feel small, where we feel not capable, and we do not look at the bigger picture. And that's what mental health management is about. Deciding that I want to try out a different perspective, because every situation has several sides to it. The way I look at it, my initial assessment is one way of looking at it. Ask a friend, ask a colleague, ask your neighbor, they're going to have a different assessment of the same situation. And it's about being open and willing to let go that what I'm currently thinking is the only truth. If we start realizing that what I'm currently thinking is not the only truth, it's one way of looking at that out of many. That's when we can start to experiment with different angles on my situation and see what it changes for us.
Feels like a relief that I don't have to defend my own view of the facts, but that there might be another way of looking at things.
It's also quite interesting to ask other people if there's a situation that you're always struggling with in work, right? Maybe a particular person or a particular meeting, I don't know. And it's something that gets you every time. It's like, yeah, this drives me crazy. Ask somebody else, a colleague, how do you view this situation? This can be highly interesting because it demonstrates there are other ways of dealing with it. And ideally, you don't talk to a colleague who's even more stressed than you, but talk to a colleague who seems to remain relaxed, who seems to be at ease with the situation, and ask them, listen, how do you do this? What's your assessment of the situation? That can also be helpful to take in input from other people, which can help me to reshift my attention and my focus. Because under stress, we're literally like this. We got like blinkers on. Oh, danger, 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 and this is terrible and awful. And it's about taking the blinkers away and being open to what else is on that theater stage.
And from your experience, are there certain thoughts or thought patterns that are particularly stress worsening or stress reinforcing?
They definitely are. We know that from stress research, there's certain thought patterns. And with thought pattern, we could also talk about I can't think of the word now. Habits. Sorry, thinking habits. We all have habits. Like when I get up in the morning, I first make myself a cup of tea because one day I decided that's a great thing to do. So it's a habit of first thing I go to the coffee machine and turn it on. It's something I learned. And throughout our childhood and socialization, we learn to think in a particular way, which works for us. And that's how these thought patterns are created. And in fact, there are some thought patterns that can be highly stress-inducing. I already mentioned one earlier, this one-sided focus on the negative. It's also called the negative consequence thinking, it's called. So I'm keeping my attention only on what is threatening, and I'm not looking at what is also there. Another couple of examples. There's also some people, maybe you've noticed it with yourself or with other people, that they frequently say things like, I don't believe this. This can't be true. I can't believe he did this again. So behind that, some people have this thought pattern of refusing to accept reality, refusing to accept that what just happened. It's there. Life is full of situations that we don't like, that threaten us, that we don't understand, but they happen all the time. And if I refuse to accept situations the way they are, I spend a lot of time and energy maneuvering myself into a sense of helplessness and to a sense of I can't control the world around me. And the bigger this sense of loss of control gets, the stronger my stress experience is going to be. So that's another thought pattern. And to give you an example of a third thought pattern that happens frequently, some people tend to personalize what's happening around them, whether it's situations or whether it's the behavior of another person. For example, your boss comes in and he doesn't say hello. Your partner is in a bad mood. And people who tend to have this thought pattern, they very quickly pull it back on themselves. Oh, what did I do wrong? Why is he in such a bad mood? I didn't do anything wrong. Or he must be annoyed at me. What did I do? So they don't consider that the person may be having completely different reason for feeling how they're feeling. They very quickly project things onto themselves and look at themselves for being at fault for what is going on here. So that's also a thought pattern that can happen very frequently. What I like to do in trainings or coachings, I ask attendants or coachees a particular question. I ask them to think about a situation in work that stresses them, on a regular level. For example, being interrupted all the time. And then I ask them, when that happens, when you feel that tension, that annoyance, that anger coming up, what thoughts go through your head at that time? Which thoughts go through your head when you feel the anger rising up? And I'd like to invite the audience, if you've got a pen and paper sitting beside you on your desk, to maybe write down a couple of those thoughts. They often start with, the sentence often starts with, I must do this, I must be this, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this, I should be a particular other way. So maybe do a little quick reflection for yourself. Do you have thoughts or phrases that you catch yourself thinking or saying a lot that put you under pressure and tension rises up?
Typical thoughts I have all the time or often.
Or frequently, that you catch yourself saying frequently.
Maybe, Dorothea, I can ask you, what was the second thought pattern, the name of it? This was a question in the chat.
So the first one I mentioned was, this can't be true, refusal to accept reality. The second one was negative consequence thinking.
Okay.
This is bound to go wrong. Oh boy, I just know this is going to go wrong. Those kind of thoughts. And the third one was to personalize.
And maybe because fits good to
Go on.
to the exercise you give to the audience right now. There's one question in the Q&A box. What to do if there's a situation that lets someone feel anger from 1 second to another and the reaction comes instant? What can we do to stop ourselves before the reaction? This is the question here. Maybe it fits to what you say about the thoughts coming up in the situation.
Good one. Very good question. Thank you for this question. Now, the tricky thing is to remember to do this, but if you remember it, then it's kind of an inverted commas an easy thing to do. Pause for a second before you react. Consciously decide not to react. You feel the anger growing up and building up inside you, and normally we would instinctively do or act a particular way. When you catch yourself in that build-up phase, conscious decision to pause, take a deep breath, or do something. If you've got one of those stress balls, I don't have one here now. If you have a stress ball, squeeze it a few times, or do that with your fist. Take a deep breath. Maybe to help yourself, do a pause. If you have a glass of water, conscious, quick pause, which will give you that second to reassess. It's all about reassessment. That initial reaction we can't stop, but we can learn to reassess. And we can only reassess if we find a way to press the pause button for ever such a brief moment, and doing a little breathing exercise or squeezing something can be ideas on how to achieve that. Because then you can decide how you want to react instead of reacting instinctively. Now, let me see if I can remember this quote from Viktor Frankl. He's not alive anymore. He was an Austrian psychotherapist, and he survived 4 different concentration camps. And he said, but hold on, hope I can remember this now. Between the situation happening, it's not the exact quote, but something like that. Mm-hmm. Between the situation happening and your reaction, so between the situation and your reaction, there's a space that we can create, and that space gives us the power and the freedom to choose a reaction. And it also reminds me of the quote you started with, Inken. Mm-hmm. The biggest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another. And in order to be able to get to that point of choosing our thought, we need to find that pause button. We feel the tension rising up. Find that pause button, and that's the moment to reassess and decide, is this how I want to react, or do I want to react a different way? What's also very helpful, because in the heat of the moment, it's not that easy, admittedly. So what is highly recommended, after this live talk, sit yourself down, write down situations where you typically feel you're about to explode. Somebody does something, somebody says something, they're like, "Whoa!" Write those typical situations down and think about how you would like to react the next time that happens. What's your preferred reaction? So do a little mental dry run. Imagine yourself as a person who's able to react differently to the usual exploding and then saying things you're going to be sorry about afterwards. So do a little mental dry run, and that will make it more likely that when it actually happens and you're in the heat of the stress moment, that you're able to put it into practice. And that's not something that's going to work overnight. That requires training. It requires a decision. I want to change something. I'm fed up with always reacting this way. I want to change this. To make the decision, I'm going to sit down, prepare myself, and train this and try it out. And only through trying out can we relearn. Relearning will only function through trying it out and making the experience. And when you talk to sports people, they do a lot of mental work. They run through how am I going to move and where am I going to put my foot and what I'm going to do next? They do mental dry runs, and we can do the same when it comes to stress situations and these thought processes. Let's do mental dry runs of how we want to do better and differently the next time, and practice this mentally before we try it out in real life.
That's so interesting, Dorothea, because I wonder if just this 1 second is so helpful and can change the whole situation.
Yes. It's unbelievable. It's literally a second. That second between I'm exploding instinctively and a second between, okay, what did I practice? How did I decide that I want to react instead? Like that example you said with your partner. No, I don't want to explode again. It's not helpful. I don't want to explode again. I mentally trained a different reaction, and you need that second in order to be able to put that in practice. And yes, it's not easy. It takes practice. It's like if you want to run a marathon, you're not going to be able to run a marathon in a week. You have to start small. You need a training plan, and you have to stick at it. And it's exactly the same when it comes to retraining our thinking processes and habits.
And maybe I can even get a little bit more time, not just the second, but I could say, wait a minute, I have to think about it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Inken. Perfect. Yeah. That's the next thing. If I don't know yet how I want to react, you can react by saying, listen, I need a moment to think about this before I can give you an answer. So you can buy yourself time.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, let's come back to this stress reinforcing thoughts. We were just thinking about or gathering examples.
Exactly, that's what I just remembered at the same time as you.
So I think maybe the audience as well has just thought about what are your personal stress amplifying thoughts that you usually have in stressful situations. And Dorothea, maybe you have some examples. You said you know many people from your coaching and from trainings and seminars. What do people usually think?
I brought a little collection. We're going to share a slide with you. And maybe there's some thoughts that you would say, oh yeah, know that one. That's a thought that I frequently have when it comes to putting myself under even more pressure. So these are real life examples and anonymized, good grief, of course, but just to give you an idea of what kind of thoughts people have. And I think what's really important in the remaining time we have to talk about what can we do against them? How can we turn this thing around? How can I learn to reshift my focus?
That's a crucial question.
That's a crucial question. I'd like to introduce 3 steps, right? 3 steps to learn to distance myself from stress aggravating thoughts and to develop thoughts and attitudes that are stress relieving, that take pressure away from me and that are helpful. So less from the thoughts that make me feel small and incapable and burdened, and more thoughts that I find helpful, that strengthen me, that give me courage and hope that I'm able to deal with this. So this is what mental stress management is all about. 3 steps. And the first step is to be more mindful of the thoughts that go on in your head. And that little exercise we just did is one way of playing stress and thought detective, right? Maybe some of you already written down a couple of thoughts. First, make yourself aware what kind of thoughts are going through my head the whole time, and making yourself aware that these are just thoughts. They're not facts. They're not reality. They're thoughts. They're one way of looking at a situation. So being aware of them, and I already pointed this out a second ago. I'd just like to repeat it. Write down, either when you're in a situation that stresses you, or if it's not possible during the situation, and do it afterwards in the evening. Reflect typical frequent situations where you feel under pressure and where you feel stressed. Think back to the situation and try and remember, what did I think the moment that negative feeling started popping up? What thoughts were going through my head? So that's the first step. We need to make ourselves aware of all these. A lot of the time they're automatic thoughts. I don't consciously think them. They just pop up from experience. So I need to play detective and uncover the thoughts that put me under pressure. So that's step number 1. Okay. Step number 2 is to critically reflect these thoughts, challenge them. Maybe you find the metaphor helpful of bring your thoughts to court, put them into cross-examination, right? Don't just believe them. And that's the title of this live talk. Mm-hmm. Don't believe everything you think. Do not believe every thought that pops into your head. Just because it pops into your head does not mean that thought is true. Let's reassess, let's cross-examine our thoughts, and then decide if that is a thought I want to believe, or if that is a thought I don't want to believe. So critically reflect them and challenge your thoughts. How can you do that? A couple of questions that can help you for this cross-examination of your thoughts. Let's take, I'm not up to this, right? Thought, I'm not up to this. This is too much. I feel it last year. I'm not up to this. Ask yourself, is that thought helpful? How does it make me feel? Probably it's going to make me feel small. It's going to make me feel helpless. Do I want to feel that way? Do I want to feel small and helpless? Is that thought going to help me find a solution for the problem that I'm in? And then asking yourself, is that really true that I'm not up for it? You know, trying to think back to situations where you were definitely well up to it, where you managed to succeed with something, where you managed to deal with a challenge. Find proof that your thought is not true by remembering concrete situations in your working life. So in which specific situations did you prove the opposite to kind of prove that this thought is not, at least not true all the time for you? What would your best friend say? What would your spouse say about the situation? So take a different angle on this thought. Challenge it, question it. That's the second step. And then the third step, number 3, let's think back to our spotlight. Third step is to look at what's also there. So let's find and develop thoughts and attitudes that are helpful to us by refocusing or shifting our attention and awareness to other thoughts that we find more helpful. Now, why is that so important? Why is that so important? If, let's say, if I don't want you to think about a pink elephant, right? Do not think about a pink elephant. What are you going to do? Of course you're going to think about a pink elephant. You cannot not think. It's not going to work. If you tell your brain, do not think negative thoughts, you're going to think negative thoughts. Tell your brain what else it should think about. If I don't want you to think about a pink elephant, I could say something like, think about a cute kitten. Tell your brain what it should think about. Look for thoughts that are helpful. And that brings me back to the quote, William James, we have the ability to choose one thought over another. And this again, it requires a little bit of training. It's maybe not that easy. And it's, if you work for a company that has an EAP, it's definitely something you could use to challenge your thoughts with another person, or maybe you have a coach that you know, maybe you can talk to a good friend. It's helpful to talk to somebody else, because putting those blinkers away is not that easy. It can be helpful when you've got someone else helping you take off those blinkers by suggesting you a different angle on that. So especially at the beginning, it can be helpful to have someone help you with this. And eventually you can get into a new thinking habit of being more critical of your own thoughts, not taking every thought that pops into your head at face value, but taking a step back and thinking, how does it make me feel? Do I want to feel this way? And which thought would I find helpful? And because this is so important, I actually prepared a slide for this. So one slide summarizing this process. And if you want, because there's no handout, if you want, just take a screenshot or take your camera and take a picture. So the first step is...
Yeah, you can make this box where you can see the slide. You can make it bigger. You can change it so that you can take a photo.
Size, yeah.
Change the size.
So make yourself be more mindful of the kind of thoughts that go through your head and challenge them. Left side, challenge your thoughts, and then redirect your spotlight. What is more helpful? What makes me feel better about myself? We're so unbelievably strict on ourselves. We'd never be that strict on somebody else, on our children, on our partners. And we're very strict with ourselves. So it's also about being more kind to ourselves and redirecting our focus to thoughts that are helpful, that build us up, that build our self-worth up.
Dorothea, maybe you can just repeat the different thought patterns, because people say that it's very blurred when it's enlarged. And so maybe just take notes, because it won't be possible to send this slide to everyone. So just repeat.
Okie doke. Sorry about this. We didn't realize that it goes fuzzy when it's enlarged. So for everyone, if you're interested, to write it down, 3 steps. Step number 1, be mindful of your thoughts, challenge them, bring them to court and to a cross-examination. And you can challenge them, step number 2, by asking yourself the following questions. How does this thought make me feel? Is this thought helpful to me? How does it make me feel if I keep dwelling on this thought? Is this how I want to feel? Is it true, what I'm thinking? What would other people say about this? Is there another side to the situation I have so far not paid attention to? So anything that's gonna challenge the current thought. And then step number 3, reshifting. Think of the torchlight, think of the spotlight. We can decide to choose another thought. We can decide to move. The spotlight represents my attention, my mind's attention. I can decide what I want to focus on. Let's move the focus to thoughts that are helpful. So here's some questions for you to write down that can help you detect and develop more helpful thoughts and attitudes. What alternative thought do I find helpful? Which thought can calm me down? Which thought will take pressure off me now? Which thought will help me to feel better about myself? Which thought will help me to be kinder to myself, more compassionate? And I would recommend that you start this training by going over stress situations that happen in your everyday life on a regular basis. Take them as a basis and start to reflect, what are the thoughts that I have, and then do this process, cross-examining them, challenging them, and finding alternatives. And then it's about catching that moment, finding that pause button in which you can make the decision, I want to choose one thought over another.
Dorothea, thank you for recommending the EIP counseling, because I think this is really, really good possibility to look at this a little bit closer with a little bit of help, because I think that this sometimes can be hard work, and it's not always very well. It's not what it can be difficult to find out what are the thoughts that are coming up unconsciously, and maybe these are thoughts I don't really like. So I have to face that sometimes there are things inside of me which I don't really want, but they are there, and it's easier to face it when you have somebody on your side. So
definitely, yeah. If you have chance to have support, whether it's an EAP or some other support, it's definitely helpful to take an external perspective from this. It's going to make it easier to detect, because they're like blind spots. These thoughts are often like blind spots. They're there. They work on an unconscious level. I'm not aware of them. So sometimes a person from the outside can spot the blind spots easier than I can spot myself. Inken, I have... sorry to be jumping in here. I have a little exercise I'd like to present, because some people find this very, very helpful.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's basically, if you're troubled by frequent brooding, so if you're prone to rumination and you find yourself getting stuck in the spiral of negative thinking that pulls you down and it feels heavy in your weight, little exercise to emphasize and to make it more to actually experience the difference, what it's like dwelling on those thoughts versus letting go of these thoughts. So pretend your hands are all these negative thoughts that you're having, right? So when you're brooding and ruminating and you're going over the same thing over and over again, and you can't get out of it, it's as if these thoughts, which are your hands, are all over your face like this, right? So you're brooding and you're ruminating, and you're so absorbed in all that negative thinking that you can't see what's behind your hands. And behind your hands is your life. There's your family, there's your job, there's your friends, there's your sports, your neighbors, but you can't see it because you're so engrossed in the negative thinking. Now, open your fingers a little bit. All of a sudden you can see a bit at least. Now move your hands a little bit away from your face. Feels already quite a bit better, doesn't it? So you can still see your hands, they're still pretty big, so those negative thoughts are still very dominant, but at least you can see more, you feel less burdened down and less oppressed. And the more you move your hands away, all of a sudden, oh wow, they're a lot smaller. They're still here. You can't see them now because out of the camera, but they're still here, but they're a lot smaller. And all of a sudden you can see what's out there as well, what other things are on that theater stage. And if you want, you can put your hands on your desk or on your lap, and they're not totally away, they're still there, but they're not hindering you from living your life that is also there besides all these negative thoughts. And some people find it quite helpful to make that connection between their brooding, dominating them, and stopping them from living their actual life. And another concrete tip, because brooding is very frequent, or rumination is very frequent for people who are under immense stress and pressure. We can't stop the thoughts from coming up, they just pop up, but we can learn to here we come again to the point where we can decide what we want to focus on. So what is helpful for some people to allow themselves a limited time for brooding and rumination. So take a timer, right? Kitchen timer. Give yourself 15 minutes and allocate your brooding to one corner in your home. Ideally something uncomfortable. Maybe you've got an expensive designer chair, it looks great, it's very uncomfortable, something like that. A place you don't normally like to sit, and choose this one place as your rumination corner. And then you give yourself 15 minutes on that uncomfortable chair and you let it all out. Let it all out, uncensored, all those negative thoughts. And, ideally do write them down. And after 15 minutes, to put a stop to the brooding and physically put those thoughts that you've written down, physically put them in an envelope or maybe get a brooding box, physically put that piece of paper away to symbolize, okay, you've had your go, brooding thoughts, negative thoughts. Now I'm going to focus on a solution. Now I want to focus on an alternative thought, and I want to focus on a thought that I find helpful. So maybe that's something that you'd like to try out.
Great exercise. That's a great tip. Thanks a lot, Dorothea. Really. And I like this idea with the hands. That's great.
Makes it quite, you can experience what's happening on a mental level. You can feel it all of a sudden, what that is the equivalent to.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Pleasure.
And it's almost time to say goodbye.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. Dorothea, thanks a lot. This was really, really so interesting, and I feel relieved, and I have some ideas of how to deal with all these thoughts that come up, and I have found some of my typical thoughts in your examples, and thanks a lot. So I hope that our audience as well can take something with you, and
hope that as well. Yeah. It gives us back control. It gives us back control. We're not helpless when it comes to thought. Sometimes it may feel that way, but we're not. We can take back control. There's ways to do that. And I really do hope that the audience is going home with a couple of impulses and ideas of how they can do that. Thank you very much for
thanks a lot
having me here today, for joining us.
Maybe see you next time in one of our next live talks. Thanks a lot, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.